everyone, it's Hailey, and today is Bookmas Day 4, so I'm going to be talking about the books that I DNFed this year. This is a new topic this year because this is something that I just started doing in 2019 and it was actually so beneficial for me. So DNF, for those of you who don't know, means did not finish. So these are books that I started and I got to a certain point and I realized I wasn't enjoying it and it wasn't worth my time, and I decided to put it down in favor of something that I would enjoy. This used to be something that I wouldn't do because I was like, but what if it gets better? But generally it doesn't end up getting better, and it's more worth it to take that time and read something that I'm actually going to like. So if you are very much against DNFing, I highly encourage you to rethink that, because it changed my reading, honestly, for the better, because I felt like I wasn't trudging through books and those books would have always put me in a slump. So just taking the time and putting them down and donating them and giving them to someone who might actually love them felt a lot better than putting myself in a reading slump for a 3-star book or a 2-star book, which doesn't really make sense. So I DNF'd 7 books over the course of 2019. Honestly, it would have been more because there's a couple that I definitely would have DNF'd, but one I kept on waiting for it to get better and felt like it would, and it just didn't, but I was too far into it to give up at that point. And the other 2 that I'm thinking of are ones that I had to read for bookmarked, but I definitely would have DNF'd them if I hadn't had to read them. But all 3 of those books I'll actually be talking about in my next Bookmas video, but today we're going to focus on the books that I just decided weren't worth my time to finish them. That doesn't mean I think they're bad books, they just weren't for me. So let's get into the list. I don't have these books anymore because once I DNF a book, I just put it straight into my unhaul pile. So I'm just going to be putting a picture of the cover for you guys here. So first up is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This one was entirely my fault. Like, I blame myself for this. I heard good things about it and I heard that it was a Lord of the Flies retelling and I was like, that's intriguing. But then I started listening to it and I was just like cringing because it's really gross. And like, I have a very low tolerance for that stuff. And I generally like to go into books not knowing that much and not having read the synopsis, because I find, one, sometimes the synopsis gives too much away. I don't like when I get to the 100-page mark and like things that are in the synopsis have happened. I'm like, I feel like I'm far enough in that I shouldn't know that this is going to happen. And the second reason is because I think sometimes a synopsis can give you false hope for what a book is going to be. So I try and know like the bare minimum and just kind of go into it, especially when a book is that hyped up. I'm just trying to see what the hype is about, if I agree with it. And I heard Lord of the Flies retelling, which I don't think it even like actually is. I think it's just kind of inspired by it. But this book, if I had read the synopsis, I wouldn't have picked it up. It's kind of like The Maze Runner, but meets, I don't even know. It's The Maze Runner, but there's like a plague and it's like gross. So these girls are in this school and they're secluded there because they all have the illness, and it's just like, there's things that happened in the first 5 minutes that scarred me for life. I was sitting there listening to the audiobook while I'm driving my car and I was like, turn it off. Like, it was horrible, but that's entirely my fault, so oops. Next is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. This is an adult romance book and it was sent to me unsolicited, and I had heard really good things about The Hating Game by this author, so I decided to try it out, take a chance on it. I had been taking a chance on a lot of adult romances, so I was like, why not? And I think I got like 15 or 20 pages in when I was like, wow, this is not for me. There wasn't anything really wrong with the storyline. It was the writing, which is very weird because I actually read The Hating Game after this and I liked The Hating Game, but the writing for 99% Mine was very bizarre. I was super confused and like couldn't tell what was happening, and I felt like I had to keep rereading things. And by rereading things, I mean like rereading the same sentence. Like, it was weird and just an experience, and it didn't take me long to decide, no, I'm gonna move on to something else. And from what I've seen from other people, they felt the same, so it wasn't just me. Next is The Beholder by Anna Bright. I got an arc of this. I went to a HarperCollins event where they were talking about the new releases that were coming out in the spring, and this book sounded very appealing to me. It's described as The Bachelor, but like a fantasy version of The Bachelor. So the main character goes on this voyage and meets these different guys and has to decide who to marry. And I was like, a fantasy version of The Bachelor kind of sounds like The Selection, which is like a guilty pleasure read for me, but it just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I think I got like 60 pages into it and you had only met one of the love interests, and I wasn't even like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like a romance to me, and that was what I had been expecting, so that's where I was kind of let down. I wasn't really invested enough in the storyline or the characters to care that much, so I decided to move on to something else instead of waiting to see if it was going to get better and you would meet more love interests, and I don't know, it just like, I had certain expectations for it, which this is the synopsis thing I'm talking about, because if I do have expectations for a book and like something that I think it's gonna be and then it's not like that, I'm ultimately going to be disappointed, so oh well. Lucy has come and decided that she's going to help me with filming. You're being very helpful, thank you. Thanks. Thanks, girl. Next is Dear Evan Hansen by Emmich. She keeps on crawling up here and she's gonna knock down my laptop. What are you doing? So this is a novelization of the Broadway musical, and I hadn't seen the Broadway musical and I also hadn't listened to any of the songs from it, so I had very little backstory, and I think that I just needed to see it as a musical. I think that's how I would like to consume that story. The book just left me wanting more, and I think I got about 100 pages into it and I was like, I don't care enough to continue with it, and that's why I DNF'd it. Next is This Adventure Ends by Emma Mills. Once again, this was a case of not really connecting with the characters, but also the writing style just didn't really mesh with me, and that's really important. I need the writing style of an author to be something that I enjoy, obviously, or else why would I enjoy their story? And Emma Mills is an author I had heard some really good things about, so I'm very sad that this book didn't work for me, but since it was the writing style, I decided to unhaul the other books of hers that I had as well, because I don't think that's going to change in her other books. Although with 99% Mine and The Hating Game, it was very different, but I have to unhaul books somehow because I have too many. Next is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is like one of the most disappointing books to be on this list because that cover is beautiful and I was so excited for this book, but I like, once again, this was a case of being confused, and maybe I'm just dumb, like that is very well possible, but if a book is confusing to me and I have to keep on rereading sentences to figure out what's going on, that is like the #1 way that I will DNF a book, because I don't want to keep on rereading in order to understand what's happening and like feel like I'm that meme, the like calculation meme. It stresses me out, so I don't want to be like that. And The Gilded Wolves was like a very bad offender for that. I think I got 30 pages in, and that's pretty good because I kept on having to reread sentences and was like, what? Like, I was just question marks the entire time. So I did try the audiobook, because if a book confuses me and I keep on having to reread, I will try the audiobook sometimes because sometimes it will be better, but the audiobook was not good. Like, I think it was I kind of put it from my mind, but if I remember correctly, the male narrator was not good. I did not like it at all, and I feel really bad saying that, but like, it was not for me. I hope that you guys liked it. I know it was a very divisive book. Is it divisive or divisive? I don't think I've ever said that word. Is that even a word? The point is, maybe I am dumb. And the final book that I DNF'd, I actually just recently DNF'd, and that was Frankly in Love by David Yoon. This was 100% a case of the author's writing style not meshing with me. I think maybe if I had read it when I was younger, I may have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I felt like the characters were trying really hard to be quirky, and the book itself was just trying very hard, and that's why it just didn't end up working for me. The first little bit of it is super info dumpy, which is kind of weird for a contemporary novel. I feel like generally contemporary novels, you don't have that much info dumping, but there was a lot of info dumping. So I got to about 70 pages in and decided that I was going to take a step back, and I was going to continue with it, but I was like, why? Like, why am I going to continue with it if I'm not liking it at this point and the writing style is the problem? I don't think that's going to change as we go further on into the book. And another issue that I had was that the romance kind of came out of absolutely nowhere. So it was literally like, here's this girl and now you're dating. And I do feel like there's going to be another romance that's happening, but I just didn't really care enough to continue. I did like the elements that were dealing with racism. I thought that was very well done, and for that reason I wanted to continue, but it was really the writing style that I just couldn't get behind. So those are all the books that I DNF'd in 2019. I hope that you guys may have read these books and enjoyed them. They just weren't for me, unfortunately. And I know you guys hate the disclaimer, but you know what? I hate receiving the hate comments, so oh well. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to click that subscribe button, then click that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. I'm posting 21 new videos over the course of December for Bookmas, so you don't want to miss any of those. And you can also follow me on all of my social media. All of my handles and links and all that jazz are down below for you guys. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video soon. Bye!